Good afternoon and welcome to the end of Thursday. We've been remote learning for 4 days now. I can't decide if it's flown by or it's been forever. But then school's normally like that, isn't it? You know, on a Friday, Monday feels like forever ago, but the days whiz by. So here we are. And look, we're getting towards the end. We're on to our next chapter, and I mean, we've just left Alex on that beach. Well, he jumped back in the car, didn't he? But stuff is going down, and let's find out what. Death in the long grass. Next chapter. Alex was woken up by an indignant, love that word, Nadia Vole knocking at his door. He had overslept. This morning it is your last opportunity to experience the Stormbreaker, she said. Right, Alex said. This afternoon we begin to send the computers out to the schools. Herr Sale has suggested that you take the afternoon for leisure. A walk perhaps into Port Talon. There is a footpath that goes through the fields and then by the sea. You will do that, yes? Yes, I'd like that. Good. And now I leave you to put on some clothing. I will come back for you in 10 Minuten. Alex splashed cold water on his face before getting dressed. It had been 4 o'clock by the time he had got back to his room and he was still tired. His night expedition hadn't been quite the success he'd hoped. He had seen so much. The submarine, the silver boxes, the death of the guard who had dared to drop one. And yet in the end, he still hadn't learned anything. Was Yasin Grigorovich working for Herod Sale? He had no proof that Sale knew he was here. And what about the boxes? They could have contained packed lunches for the staff of Sale Enterprises for all he knew, except that you didn't kill a man for dropping a packed lunch. Today was 31st of March. As Vola said, the computers were on their way out. There was only 1 day to go until the ceremony at the Science Museum. But Alex had nothing to report, and the one piece of information that he had sent, Ian Ryder's diagram, had also drawn a blank. I still find that significant. There had been a reply waiting for him on the bottom screen of his Nintendo when he turned it on before going to bed. Unable to recognise diagram or letters numbers. Possible map reference but unable to source map. Please transmit further observations. Alex had thought of transmitting the fact that he had actually sighted Yasin Grigorovich, but he decided against it. If Yasin was there, Mrs. Jones had promised to pull him out. And suddenly, Alex wanted to see this through to the end. Oh, Alex. Something was going on at Sale Enterprises. That much was obvious, and he'd never forgive himself if he didn't find out what it was. Nadia Vole came back for him as promised, and he spent the next 3 hours toying with the Stormbreaker. This time he enjoyed himself less, and this time he noticed when he went to the door, a guard had been posted in the corridor outside. It seemed that Sale Enterprises wasn't taking any more chances where he was concerned. 1 o'clock arrived, and at last the guard released him from the room and escorted him as far as the main gate. It was a glorious afternoon, the sun shining as he walked out to the road. He took a last look back. Mr. Grin had just come out of one of the buildings and was standing some distance away, talking into a mobile phone. There was something unnerving about the sight. Why should he be making a telephone call now? And who could possibly understand a word he said? It was only once he'd left the plant that Alex was able to relax. Away from the fences, the armed guards, and the strange sense of threat that pervaded Sale Enterprises, it was as if he was breathing fresh air for the first time in days. The Cornish countryside was beautiful. The rolling hills a lush green, dotted with wild flowers. Alex found the footpath sign and turned off the road. He had worked out that Port Talon was a couple of miles away, a walk of less than an hour if the route wasn't too hilly. In fact, the path climbed upwards quite steeply almost at once, and suddenly Alex found himself perched over a clear blue and sparkling English channel, following a track that zigzagged precariously along the edge of a cliff. To one side of him, fields stretched into the distance, their long grass bending in the breeze. To the other, there was a fall of at least 50 metres to the rocks and water below. Port Talon itself was at the very end of the cliffs, tucked in against the sea. It looked almost too quaint from here, like a model in a black and white Hollywood film. He came to a break in the path, a second much rougher track leading away from the sea and across the fields. His instincts would have told him to go straight ahead, but a footpath sign pointed to the right. There was something strange about the sign. Alex hesitated for a moment, wondering what it was. Then he dismissed it. Always go with your gut, Alex. Always go with your gut. He was walking in the countryside and the sun was shining. What could possibly be wrong? He followed the sign. The path continued for about another quarter of a mile, then dipped down into a hollow. Here the grass was almost as tall as Alex, rising up all around him, a shimmering green cage. A bird suddenly erupted in front of him, a ball of brown feathers that spun around on itself before taking flight. Something had disturbed it, and that was when Alex heard the sound. An engine getting closer. A tractor? No, it was too high-pitched and moving too fast. Alex knew he was in danger, the same way an animal does. There was no need to ask why or how. Danger was simply there. And even as the dark shape appeared, crashing through the grass, he was throwing himself to one side, knowing, too late now, what it was that had been wrong about the second footpath sign. It had been brand new. The first sign, the one that had led him off the road, had been weather-beaten and old. Someone had deliberately led him away from the correct path and brought him here, to the killing field. He hit the ground and rolled into a ditch on one side. The vehicle burst through the grass, its front wheel almost touching his head. Alex caught a glimpse of a squat black thing with 4 fat tyres, a cross between a miniature tractor and a motorbike. It was being ridden by a hunched-up figure in grey leathers with helmet and goggles. Then it was gone, thudding down into the grass on the other side of him and disappearing instantly, as if a curtain had been drawn. Alex scrambled to his feet and began to run. There were 2 of them. He knew what they were now. He'd ridden similar things himself on holiday in the sand dunes of Death Valley, Nevada. Kawasaki 4x4s, powered by 400cc engines with automatic transmission. Quad bikes. They would circle him like wasps. A drone, then a scream, and a second bike was in front of him, roaring towards him, cutting a swathe through the grass. Alex hurled himself out of its path, once again crashing into the ground, almost dislocating his shoulder. Wind and engine fumes whipped across his face. He had to find somewhere to hide, but he was in the middle of a field and there was nowhere apart from the grass itself. Desperately, he fought through it, the blades scratching at his face, half blinding him as he tried to find his way back to the main path. He needed other people, whoever had sent these machines, and now he remembered Mr. Green talking on his mobile phone. They couldn't kill him if there were witnesses around. But there was no one, and they were coming for him. Together this time. Alex could hear the engines whining in unison, coming up fast behind him. Still running, he glanced over his shoulder and saw them, one on each side, seemingly about to overtake him. It was only the glint of the sun and the sight of the grass slicing itself in half that revealed the horrible truth. The 2 bikers had stretched a length of cheese wire between them. Cheese wire is very sharp, very thin wire used to cut cheese. Imagine what speed it would do to a human. Alex threw himself headfirst, landing flat on his stomach. The cheese wire whipped over him. If he had still been standing up, it would have cut him in half. Right, time for a pause. What a Thursday afternoon chapter this is. Let's see where it ends us up with part 2.